Hello and welcome to the Persuasion Lab podcast. I'm your host, Moeed Amin. The goal for this show is if you're in sales, whether you're a sales professional, sales leader, whether you're a founder of a company, quite frankly, if you are a professional in any form of career, if persuasion and communicating and persuading people to make change and to take on ideas is a critical part of what you do, then this is the show for you. Success is not just about the skills and the knowledge you acquire, it is about the person that you become. So we'll cover not just the typical sales techniques and skills and approaches, which are absolutely valuable that you will learn from here, but we cover a wide range of things so that you can become the best version of yourself. So we've had people coming on in relation to who are experts at behavioral psychology, body language, being able to communicate and speak with eloquence. We've even had a functional medicine expert to help you improve your memory, energy, and focus. One of the things that I've been thinking about a lot and talking about with the community has really been around two areas. Number one, which is how, and this is a big question that I get from sales professionals, which is, how can I create closer alignment and engagement with my buyers? How do I know whether they're reading the proposals and the information that we send over to them? How do we know, or how can we control more of that information communication and exchange into kind of almost one platform? And then the question that I get from sales professionals is, how can I become the best leader possible, right? And we hear about this so much. And one of the things that salespeople are always trying to do is, how can I get a mentor? How can I learn from salespeople, sales leaders that have been there and done that? And it's quite hard to get a mentor these days. There are so many around, but there are also so many people vying for their time and attention. And one of the best ways is through the podcast here. So I'm delighted to have our next guest today, who actually we're going to talk about those two areas with this person. So this guest actually has, he's the founder and CEO of Aligned, and Aligned helps sellers create, personalized workspaces for closer engagement with buyers. He's been in the SaaS sales game for about 16 years now, and has led and grown businesses, some well-known businesses, including Sisense, Anagog, and Syte. And one of the interesting things is he describes his superpowers, and I'm going to read this here because this was so interesting. He describes his superpower as the ability to create highly data-driven and efficient sales machines. Now, that's something that's really interesting to a lot of the community here, and going to love to dig down deeper into that. And he's helped teams kind of win six-figure deals remotely in just 2 to 3 months. So excited to have him on the show. Please help me welcome Mr. Gal Aga. Gal, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Really excited to be here. Thank you for the intro.
Yeah, and no, my pleasure. And really excited for the discussion that we're going to have today. So why don't we kick off here, because you've led sales teams in several companies, and these are companies that you've helped grow, some of them from zero to, I think it was something like, correct me if I'm wrong, but to multiple millions in annual revenue rate. Is that correct?
Yeah, tens, yeah.
So I'm really keen to understand, what are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned from leading those SaaS businesses?
So starting with the big question, and I think, thinking about it, there are a few things that kind of throughout the years, I keep kind of coming back to as the key things that I see that eventually are, I think it's even more than a business, a lot more than sales teams, right? I think it's really crucial for the business. So the first of them, I'm really passionate about this personally, is cultures. I think that we all talk about all the time about skills and about experience and about how do we teach a lot of these sandler and challenger sales and a lot of different methodologies and MEDPIC, right, and all of these things. And these are great, but eventually what I found that is a force multiplier, right, is that, if you look at an equation, it's skills plus experience multiplied by the attitude and behavior of the salesperson. I think that's really the secret sauce, and that has been my passion for many years. And it starts with first hiring for that. I have a lot of these different mantras, hire for potential, not skills. That's the way I like to look at it. And it's not only hiring for it, it's nurturing for it. How do you continue to create that environment where that's the DNA of the team, right? And to give you a few examples, right? People, there's one sales org competition against each other. That doesn't make sense. Why should one salesperson be competing with another salesperson? They all, right, need to work towards the same goal of the company's revenue or the customers really in the front. So, competing with yourself, with who you used to be, and being better than who you were yesterday versus others. I think another thing is the better you are, the less you work alone. That's another key thing that really we always try to nurture within the team. And really, I think that controlling the ego and being laser focused on progress and winning, that's really the attitudes that I'm looking for. So I think that's one thing. I've actually went in most details into this one again because really, again, most passionate about that. I think the second one also related to the short intro that you just mentioned about me. Then I think that it's a machine, right? Look at it. You have to look at it as a machine. I know that there are a lot of different sales leaders. A lot of them are more executors. They want to be in this field all the time, and they're great at that. So a good best practice I think would be to go and bring someone, maybe strong rev up, someone that can help you kind of complete that part. But you really have to look at it as a machine. But eventually, kind of one of the mistakes that I've done throughout the years is not keeping in mind that I have to adopt the KISS method, right? How to build a machine, but not with what I know, or really with who I'm here to serve, which is my employees, the reps in mind. And then the third thing, this is when you're building teams and hiring managers. Then I think another kind of big thing, and is a big challenge, is really hire leaders that are better than you are. I know it's a little bit of a cliche, but one of the things that I've seen, that the more you're needed, like as a CRO, right? The more you're needed right now in sales or in customer success or in SDR to do like, building processes or to help with hiring in very details or with other things, the less you can do your job, which is, the integration between all of the revenue related units. So, you need to find the leaders that you can coach. Okay, you have to be able to coach. It's otherwise people don't get value from working, right? There has to be some coaching element there, but not training. And I think that's a key thing. You really scale when you have leaders that can run and really manage, lead, manage, build, and hire their team. So I think these are the key things. Yeah.
That's really interesting. I want to talk about the cultures element, but before I do, I want to just, that thing that you said around coaching those leaders, but not training them. My view is that you're coaching them more around how to think, but how to think, because that's how they're going to get to the next level. But you may have a different view here. So what is it that you're genuinely coaching those leaders on?
It can be different things. Like, if I'm you can't be, right, a manager that knows everything about everything. It doesn't make sense. Okay, you can't aspire to be. You need to all the time try to improve and learn. But if you bring an expert revenue operations and an expert SDR, they will know more than you. If you know more than them in SDR and revenue operations, all these things, you're probably very, you might be very seasoned, or maybe too much into the weeds, into the details. So that part they should bring. But I think they all are there because they probably at some point also want to take a step up into leadership, and into higher level leadership. And I think that this is probably more of the area that you enter. But each has some areas of weaknesses, something that they want to work on still. And this is where you need to find these areas and see how you can add value.
So what does leadership mean for you then? Because if that's the thing that you're coaching them in higher levels of leadership, what are some of those? What does that mean to you then?
Yeah. By the way, they might not need a leadership coaching. They might be amazing leaders, and maybe even I could learn from from that. But let's say a few examples would be when a sales leader, for example, has been a VP sales before or a director before and led like eight people, 8 reps, something like that. And then over time, they need to step up and start managing managers, right? So that's really a great opportunity, an area where you can add value and really coach on leadership.
And the cultures elements. I mean, I'm taking notes here because I love these podcast sessions because I learn a lot as well as our listeners and viewers. The cultures here. What you described was really interesting because you talked about several things there. One of which was you're helping people reach their potential, right?
Yeah.
And that's amazing. And that's what this podcast show is all about. And most of the time you shouldn't really compete with others. You should be competing with your own potential, because your own potential is probably going to be a lot higher than the potential of others, or at least you hope it should be, right? But you talked about you're hiring for potential, not skill. And you're talking about the attitudes of the seller. Talk about how you identify that during the interview process, because that's not necessarily easy to identify. At least it's not as easy as skills.
Definitely not. Actually, I don't have a really good answer for that, because I'm personally, I've just got, I'm really, really focused on that. And I think I just got used to it. And it's a lot of intuition and experience and focusing on that area. It's always funny. Like I've been at situations where my VPs, directors, like would get excited about someone, bring them, and in one interview, I after 5 minutes get that it's not the right attitude. But this is the one area that I haven't yet kind of broken down into a playbook, and it should be also a playbook. I think that the Amazons of the world and all of that probably have really, really good playbooks at how to detect that. I've kind of mostly did that in startups, few hundreds of employees, and kind of haven't gotten to really establish something that's more of process around it.
And maybe we can figure something out here, because what about if you think about the last time when you got a bad feeling from someone, or where it just didn't seem to fit? Walk me through that. I'm really interested to understand how you got that feeling. What was it that they said or did?
Okay. So let's think about maybe a few red flags, right? What are the potential red flags that could come up in an interview? One of them is where from what place they're selling. I think that one key thing is really when you see someone that's selling from a place of strength and only strength, or from a place of I want to win and that's the only thing, and really that's what you see behind it. That's not that's not selling today, right? That's not you can sell, of course, everything can happen, but that's not the environment that we're living. That won't work. So I think that's one thing. Second thing, now that I'm thinking about that, there are tons of examples. I should have answered this right away, but so the other thing is you give some feedback. A lot of times kind of try to give some feedback, try to challenge them a little bit during an interview about things, and you see the body language, right? You see the movement. So if someone from a mild kind of challenge that you do about something gets like uncomfortable in the seat, that's a warning flag, a red flag. So these are two examples.
I mean, certainly I resonate with the last one, because I've been through that myself, where I was someone that took small feedback quite personally, and I had to learn that actually that's not how I should be thinking about it. Doesn't mean I shouldn't get upset by it, but I should be at least very open to the type of coaching that's being given to me. So I totally get that. And When you're thinking about, because one of the things that this is connected to, Gal, is right now it's a tough situation for a lot of it's going to become a tough situation for a lot of companies. Money's no longer as cheap as it was. There's pressure on a lot of these SaaS businesses that have received private investment to increase their run rate. And that obviously means being very careful about where they spend and being more, I don't want to use more aggressive, but more focused around growing their top line. What advice would you have for leaders in startups right now, particularly with the potential stagflation and therefore the impact this is going to have on investment money coming in and therefore the decisions they have to make in their business?
So specifically for now, I have, let's say, I have a few things that I've experienced throughout the years, and let's see how I can correlate them with this situation. Like, I think one of the biggest thing is, it's hard to find people that can really make it in sales and hit the numbers. Definitely, if you're like in the complex selling environment, enterprise, and things like that, it's really a challenge. And I've done that before, and I've seen others where if you don't bring people that are strong enough and recognize that quickly, you get drawn into that having zero time. You're covering up all the time, and you're thinking all the time because you want this to work, you want them to improve, you want to help, but there's just a lot, that needs to happen before they can get to that stage, and you're kind of running in circles. I think that now when we need to be very, very, very efficient, we need to all really recognize when we're in that situation where it might not be a good fit, and we're just running in circles, and it's really not the best fit. And I think people can find, still find, right, the best. People need to be in the place where they can be the best that they can be. I think that's one thing. Secondly, a lot of leaders go into these situations and get into panic mode and start covering up, right? So yes, the number is important, but if you cover up too much, right, and go and co-lead deals and work deals and enter into processes just to help kind of people reach their numbers. So a lot of them, if you have the right environment, that's how you work, and a lot is co-selling and you sell in teams. But I think that the risk in these situations is you miss the coaching. So I think that very few leaders coach, and really very few leaders coach. Most people just run and go and help close deals and kind of do ride-alongs, but people don't really learn. So I think even in these situations, if hitting quota is harder or something like that, or you have less less team than versus capacity, then still it's very important to keep an eye and coaching all the time to make sure that people get something, and people grow, and people get something from the company that's more than just really hitting that target and coming to work. Yeah, so I think that's a few things, and I think, I don't know if it's specifically for this period, but I think two other things that come to mind, dangers, right, that leaders should be aware of, that I've been through, and thinking what worked the team at a team of 5 will work at a team of 10 or 20 or 50. It's completely different. It's a completely revenue organization. Like, there's the law of diminishing returns, right? And then, on the Excel, everything works. You look at the Excel, you do the annual planning, everything works, but really, really take the safety measurements, the buffers, and plan for it. That's what I would say. Like, that the win rates will be a bit lower, that you'll need more pipeline that you thought of, that if you were working mostly with outbound and now you're incorporating inbound and maybe trying again events, maybe they'll have a different win rates, lower sales cycles. So, think about all of these things that could go wrong at scale, because it's just a different game year after year. And I think the last thing is, I always like, it took me time to get and really perfect this, but build pipeline as much as possible before scaling closers. Like, and taking huge buffers between both of them. It's there's very few sales orgs that people always will say. They'll always say, I think anyway, that's something that we always we want more as human beings. But also, I think it's one of the biggest challenges that sales orgs talk about, right? We don't have enough pipeline. So yeah, that's something that I always plan for more.
Yeah, there's quite a few there. I really
Yeah.
like that. That last one was really resonated with me, because I've seen leaders make this mistake where they're expecting those new closers to build the pipeline, but they haven't really done everything that they can in order to build the pipeline as much as possible, so that there's something ready for them to kind of work with. So that was that one really resonated with me. And you're talking about aware of the dangers of law of diminishing returns. That one was quite.
And the last one that you said regarding the pipeline, there are a lot of different approaches. Some say that sales are the ones that have the approach of sales should source their own pipeline. The ones that there are the companies that say no, it's only BDRs and we want to focus. But I think at the end, we all get to that point, regardless of that situation where we're missing pipeline. And it goes back to the culture. If we have a culture of accountability, of I'm the CEO of my business, this is the type of culture, and you really treat the reps like that, then they won't. Okay, no one will come and say, hey, I need more leads, I don't need more leads. Because they'll know, they'll get a face. I won't even say anything. They'll just get, hey, that's not how we're working here. What do you mean? Let's go bring leads. I'll bring leads. Let's bring leads together. Right. So I think that's first and foremost, you need to solve this with culture. But your role is to always make sure that you don't need to count on people doing, working outside of the process and the playbook and how you've envisioned the machine working in order to get to their numbers. That's an expectation, but you want to plan to not to get to that situation. That makes sense?
That does make sense. And that's really interesting when you talked about culture, because so what are the most powerful levers that you've used to develop the right culture? You talked about accountability there, but what are some of the other powerful levers that you've used and seen work very well?
I think, accountability is one. Being open, being transparent, sharing, what's on your mind, and understanding that, if you have any manager like with me and the rep with his manager, it's eventually a relationship. Leaders are not born, or it's not something that it's something that you need to earn. I can choose who I'm managing, who I'm leading. They need to choose me, and to develop that open communication, to work on that, and to really create that environment where it's okay to not agree, and it's okay even to argue a little bit. That's fine. And I think the working together and leaving ego out of the door. Like how I like to train around this a lot is around war rooms. Okay, we used to do a lot of war rooms, and a good war room is, I think war rooms were a good culture building activities, because you stand there and you expose yourself to your entire team, and you'd like to be that hero. Okay, that's the best and everything, and you're all the time, you're thinking about your positioning within the company and all of that. And it won't work if you try to be a hero in the war room, right? Because you won't expose yourself to what's wrong, and you won't accept the advice that everyone give you. So I really used to love war rooms just as a culture building type of activity, because we would really set the ground when we start the war room, and kind of talk about what are the behaviors that we think that are important to show during this work for this to be successful, for this to be not a waste of your time, for this to be valuable for you. This is for you. We're here for you. This is not for us to get reporting on where deals stand, right? We have pipeline, we have forecast, we have other things. And then when we talk about these things that should take place, how we even say, hey guys, war room time. Remember, ego's out the door. Everyone share their advice. Everyone listening. No computers, nothing. You're all in each other's deals. Okay, think about you standing there on the stage talking about your deals. You want people to listen to you. Do that. Okay, act as if you're there. Think about all the time how you would feel on the other side. So I think creating, right, bringing that that mindset into this situation really builds the culture even beyond that meeting.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting. And I want to, if you don't mind, I want to pivot now slightly to the relationship with your buyers.
Okay.
Because we talked about in these kind of tougher times, what are some of the things that sales leaders need to do with their team? What do you feel should, not just salespeople, but the whole business, what do you feel that the business needs to do in terms of their relationship with the buyers then?
So I think a lot of change, and maybe we'll get to that later on. Yeah, so a lot of change and in buying behaviors, buying expectations all the time. It's changing. COVID boosted everything and fast-tracked this evolution. I think the first and foremost is just listening. All the time listening and being open to how buyers prefer to buy and adapt to that. There's Gartner and there's McKinsey and there's a lot of research and going on around these things, but you could read the research, but really listen. You might be in a different market, it might be not exactly on the research. Listening. So let's take a few examples. So for example, if everyone are getting annoyed with you in your playbook having a standalone isolated discovery call as part of the process, and no AE is able to execute this well, and customers don't want to spend 45 minutes or whatever the process is just on discovery, asking questions and maybe just sharing a little bit of background, then skip it, change the process. Okay, it's like we're thinking all the time of, I used to be like that. I used to think of, here's the best practices. This is how you should do things. This is how you should do things. And it led me to make mistakes. I think one of the mistakes, like a few years ago, one of the companies that I was at, where we were discussing the business model, and there was a strong push internally towards volume. Okay, charging based on volume usage. And I was back then, it's not SaaS, it's not recurring. It's today we're talking about revenue run rate a lot, but it's not SaaS, it's not recurring. How do we do that? It's going to be a challenge. What do we do with investors, with the board? It's going to be hard to digest, because I was stuck. I know SaaS, I've been in sales, and I know the best practices, but now today, okay, I'm actually evaluating this for my business. UBP, usage-based pricing, is one of the most, it's like PLG in the recent years. It's built one of the best companies out there. Don't think that if you've learned the playbook and that's it, you're an expert. You're an expert only if you're listening all the time and learning all the time. After a year, you're not an expert anymore, I think, in today's environment. So that's one example. Like with the discovery call, I've throughout the years, I've just incorporated this in most playbooks into the intro call. We give and get, really kind of dance between both of these dynamics. I think another one is, if 90% of your customers want to try before they buy, then evaluate adding that into your process, not pushing them to do a 3-month paid pilot and things like that. Even ServiceNow, right? Do PLG today. Companies see that they need to adapt. Yeah, another example is, emails. Like in prospecting, we've all used emails so much and throughout so many years. And I think I felt I don't know if I can say about the entire, email best practice, email industry, that it doesn't work as well. But for me, it kind of, I felt that it stopped being as efficient. We started doing video over emails, we'd use a lot of graphics over the emails, gifts, and started trying to invent things new, because, we need to listen. And of course, technology, other than listening, technology, our product specifically addresses, and this is really our mission as a company, to profoundly elevate how buyers and sellers work together, to reduce that friction, to align them better together. And I think that there are a lot of different tools out there that are focused on that, to help really align with your buyers.
Gal, we talked about friction between the buyers and sellers, and how high it is right now. What about from the buyer's perspective? What have you observed about how buyers feel about the seller's process and their own buying journey? What have you seen buyers want from that kind of buyer-seller relationship?
Yeah, so that's a lot of that is really a lot of the research behind our product is around that buying behavior. So really deep into McKinsey and Gartner and really everything that's going on, because there's, we touched it previously a little bit, that COVID has changed a lot, right? If you think, let's take a few steps back. Let's think about the evolution and what has gone on in the next 10 years or so. So, the seller used to be really in the front, right? Like taking the briefcase, flying, putting the suit on. Okay, there was a period like that where this is how people saw. And SaaS and all that, that's really ancient history by now. So things changed, and there was the birth of inside sales, and then inside sales became something that really people could do, and even close big deals and complex deals, and the communication became much easier, and buyers started to expect that, started to get used to that concept, right, of even interacting with you remotely. But then COVID hit and accelerated that to be the norm, right? So today we're talking, so McKinsey's saying really that this has shifted so much, so that they're even saying, they have some statistic around buyers don't even want to be visited. Okay, like I have a few of these here, I think, that are interesting. I can even read a few of them. Yeah, like a buyer quote. This is from McKinsey. A buyer quote: "Please stop asking me to meet with me in person. I'm busy enough as it is." Okay, another quote: "I no longer have to wait 3 months for a date when anyone can travel to the same spot, where everyone can travel to the same spot at the same time. I can speak with experts more often and on a short notice today." Right? So, huge shift. And suddenly everyone had to adapt. So these are a few things that happened, right? But now a third thing that happened is the rise of self-serve, okay, PLG companies. Yeah. And this is, Gartner is doing a lot of research about that, and even saying that 43% of buyers today even prefer to not speak with anyone, not speak with a salesperson, and even more with millennials that are the future decision makers. So if you think about all of these things, then, and another thing from Gartner is that this means that sellers get less time with the buyer. Only 5%, according to Gartner, in a competitive scenario, is spent 5% of the buyer's time in a buying process is spent with the one single seller. Okay, so the bottom line of all of this is that buyers are really shifting away from the seller. They prefer digital. Seller is no longer the only channel. Okay, the seller is another channel, and we really should embrace a different kind of selling methodology. So I think, there are big shifts really around these areas.
So what does that mean for sellers?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, it's about really embracing digital. It's now more than just doing inside sales and remote selling and visiting here once in a while. It's really embracing more tools and really getting your skills in order in terms of selling remotely. But that's a given. I think that maybe the key thing is to forget about trying to be the only channel, trying to be the key thing that the customers need all the time, and become like someone that enables them, someone that is a partner and delivering value, and is really focused about if they want to self-serve, if they want to play more with the product on their own, respect that, and not try to push all the time to go and meet face to face. I think that's really the key change. So embracing digital, embracing more tools, being more focused on supporting the channels through which they want to engage. But of course, at the end of the day, we need to be with the eyes of the prize on the prize, and really, of course, make the moves and ask the hard question, challenge, and make sure we eventually bring the deals.
That's quite scary for a lot of salespeople and sales leaders, right? What you just described there, because traditionally, and even now, that we're still trained to take as much ownership as possible. Take more control of the sales process. And the more you're involved in that, the more likely you're going to have more of an influence. But what you're saying now is actually there's more of a balance here, right? They appreciate and understand there are times and elements in the buyer's journey where they're going to want to talk to you and they're going to want to learn from you. But there is a whole host of other times where actually you're going to be using other channels. And what you need to do is, I'm not saying, it doesn't sound to me like you're saying you should leave them alone, but what you should do is understand and respect that, because you still have influence in those other channels. You've just got to think about being present and being heard in those channels, as opposed to just your channel, which is, a phone call, a video chat, an email directly from you.
Yeah. Look, at the end of the day, if yes, we want, ideally we want all the touch points to get visibility and get control and all the time be part of every step. But if the other side doesn't see something the same as you do, then you're not aligned. Okay, this is our company's name, and this is where we're coming from. So if you're not aligned with them, then okay, you'll push to gain control in the old way, but it just won't work. You won't get it. And this is really what we're passionate about solving this with technology. And what we've done is to create that digital workspace where you work together online, digitally, with your customer, with your prospect, with the buyer, or even as a CSM with the actual paying customer, and let them lead the way within that space. But while you're still in control, because you see what's going on in that space. You get visibility on the items that interest them, on the discussions that they're going through. So it really relates to what we're doing, and we're passionate about solving this. But the bottom line is that you need to be aligned with the way that they want to buy, and not force how you want to sell.
Interesting, because you almost it sounds to me as if you're almost describing, you're giving them that safe space.
Yeah.
But it's a safe space in which you're a part of, rather than actually you don't even know what they're doing. You don't even know how they're ingesting certain information, even your information, because when you send an email to someone, other than a read receipt, which no one clicks yes on anymore, then you're not going to know how they're interacting with the information you're sharing with them. You don't know who they're sharing it with. You don't know how long they're reading it for. You've just got no idea of doing that. So it's almost as if you're allowing them to have that safe space, which is what they want. Exactly. But it's within the environment, you call it workspaces, but it's within the environment in which you're able to actually share the information you want with them. But you can also see in a non-creepy way, you can kind of see, what is it that how are they engaging with what you're sharing, and is it really of value to them?
Exactly. So, versus the alternative of you're the one that has all of the content, and you need to follow up all the time, making sure that they've seen it, and maybe you've shared something at the beginning of the process, and they need it, so they need you again because they haven't received it, all of that. When you're needed and you're all the time someone that they should come to for all of these things. And all of these channels, that's simply not, it doesn't work. And really, yeah, having everything in one place, and because they'll get and research on their own anyway. They'll go to G2, they'll go to your website, the competitors' websites, and they'll get that. Okay, I want to go and think while I'm alone, and I don't have someone over me right now, and go and read and educate myself. So you empower them to do this, but you empower them to do this in an area that gives you a little bit more control and visibility.
Gosh, I wish we had more time. I think we can talk about this for a really long time. And, I've learned a ton, and I know that our viewers and listeners will have as well. All that you've shared around, sales leadership and the right approaches, and, down to, understanding the buyers, which I completely agree with, by the way, especially during downturns and tougher markets. You've got to get as close as possible to your buyers, and enable others in the business to also acquire and understand that information as well. So I thought that was hugely, hugely interesting. A couple of questions I would like to quickly ask you. First question is, if you were to recommend 3 books or 3 experts for people to follow, what would they be?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of the classics, I would say, from my side, like nothing that's recent and surprising. I think from my answers, it's one would be the Never Split the Difference, Chris Voss, and the second would be Challenge Yourselves. So if you haven't heard these names before, these are the books. I think I'm going, and I don't have a third one that really comes to mind, but I'm going to these 2 because I think they really, they're unique. They did something and told something that's very, very new, and had an influence on me and how I sell. That's really the reason.
Thank you for that. I mean, I haven't completed Never Split the Difference, but from what I've heard, what I've read, so far, it's been great. So I'm hoping to complete that in by the end of this week. But Challenger Sale, I mean, that's personal for me. I would recommend that. I was one of my mentors was Mac Dixon, and I worked in the company. I was a sales leader there as well. So I can certainly speak to the rigor of the research and how it actually is of value to salespeople. So yeah, I totally agree with you there. Thank you for sharing those, Gal. How can people learn more about you and your business and what you're doing, and get in touch?
First of all, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to help with anything. Feel free. Everyone can feel free to reach out if you just want to consult on something or offer something. Then I'm always happy to talk. And Align, we're at teamalign.com. You can get the link also from my LinkedIn, of course. So our product is PLG, so it's free. We have a free plan, and you can just go ahead and sign up and experiment with everything that I was talking about earlier. And essentially, as mentioned, like moving the entire sales journey to that workspace to gain more control and visibility. And yeah, so happy to help, and feel free really to use the product.
Sounds good. Yeah, and we'll leave links in the show notes so that people can easily access them. So Gal, this has been really been a really interesting conversation. Actually, I learned a ton, like I said, and I know our viewers and listeners will as well. So thank you for taking the time to join us on the show and to freely share with us your experience and your advice and recommendations.
Wonderful. It's been really my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. And so this is Moeed Amin signing out. If any of the principles here has been of interest to you, you can contact Gal, and we'll leave a link in the show notes. If you're interested in terms of these, if for any listeners interested in terms of, being able to have, grow revenue with certainty, and we believe that people deserve that. Check out the links to where you can contact me and learn about more of the science-backed processes and programs that we have. But until the next episode, thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll see you later.